All right, good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 17th, 2019 Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session since 6 o'clock for items listed on the agenda. All board members are present, and at this time we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. So we will begin tonight with the public hearing for the adoption of the 2019 Certificate of Levy. So I will now call the public hearing to order. I need to have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Stufen? Here. Mrs. Hostler? Here. Mr. Collins?
Here.
Dr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mrs. Troutman?
Here.
Mrs. Gaforio?
Here. 7 board members present, none absent. At this time, Mr. Welton will give an overview.
Yes, please. Thank you. We have the 2019 tax levy for you this evening. The first thing is the timeline. Last January, we had the CPI come out at 1.9%, and this tax levy is based on that CPI. We approved in October, we approved the estimated levy. We published the truth and taxation notice in the newspaper within the time frame, and tonight we have the tax levy. It has to be filed at the counties by the last Tuesday in December, so I will get that filed at the county after the approval. And then in March, April, we get the final EAVs and rates, and then the first half of the taxes come in June, and the second half in September. Like I said, this is the CPI, 1.9%. It's averaged 1.52 over the past 5 years. The November CPI just came out last week, which was at 2.1%. Last year at this time it was 2.2, so it went down in December for the month of December from 2.2 to the 1.9. So this year it's 2.1. So could be very similar next year to what we have this year. We did the levy. We're estimating new construction at 34 million. So new construction is excluded from the tax cap law. So you get the CPI plus any new construction. So 34 million is our estimated for the levy. Because we don't know what the actual new construction EAV will be until March, April, we levy for an additional 20 million in new construction as just in case type of scenario. But no matter what we levy, the county will only extend the increase allowable under the tax cap. So the levy is just a request. But in this last slide here, it just shows the 3 columns. The first column is actual last year's extensions and rate. In the middle, we have the levy. And then to the far right is what we actually think the tax increase will come in at based on the 34 million. So the middle column, the levy, is based on the 54 million. But we actually think it'll be closer to the 3.13 on the operating funds, or the 3.17 overall. And then question I always get. So on a $400,000 house with just existing property, no new construction, the increase would be $124.87, or a 2.08% increase. So that's with no new construction. So 1.9 CPI, and then the bond and interest is a little more. So that's why it comes out to 2.08% is what a house with just existing property, no new construction would be. So that's it for the levy presentation.
Any questions from board members? Chris?
Yeah, Chris, I think it would be helpful if you wouldn't mind just providing a quick reminder of breakdown of our district's cost structure, rate of inflation on the cost structure. Thank
Okay,
you.
so as you know, we're very reliant on property taxes in this district. 83% of our operating funds come from property taxes. Then we get about 5 to 7% in other local, including interest and corporate personal property replacement taxes and fees, and then about 7% from the state and 3% from federal. So that's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we are almost 80% staffing. So, and so you have salary increases, and which include the base increase plus step, and then benefits is all part of the staffing, or the 80%. And we've done very well on the benefit side, but trend is about 7% on medical, 12 to 13% on prescription. So because of we are so reliant on staffing, meaning salaries and benefits, our expenditures tend to go up at a much faster rate than inflation, which is what our main source, or 83% of our revenues come from just the CPI, or rate of inflation. So that is kind of the structure that we work under from a financial standpoint. And with this year in the budget, we added 18 staff members due to the needs of our students. 18 staff members, but 10 certified teachers were part of it. So that's really what drives our expenditures.
Chris, if I can just emphasize your point, as I pointed out to several new board members, over the last 5 years, if we were to rely only upon the increase due to inflation of our property taxes, that would not have covered our expenses. We are extremely reliant upon this new growth, and the rate of new construction in town can't last forever. So something we need to be vigilant about is to watch that and to watch our expenses. Because when that new construction slows down, it affects our budget in a big way.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, thank you. So now I'll ask if there's public comments only regarding the levy. We'll have a separate time for other public comments. So if you have public comments regarding just the levy. Anyone? Okay. Then I will call the public hearing for the certificate of adoption of the 2019 certificate of levy adjourned, and we will now return to the regular meeting. So first up is the most important and most fun part of this job, and that is our recognition. So if I could have the York High School boys cross country team please come up and stand in the middle here and face the audience. And we have a board member who's going to come up. Yeah, Mr. Kern, do you want to speak first? Yes.
There. It's a little different for all of us.
We have new microphones. Sorry, we're getting used to this.
Oh, I'm live. I speak first, then the proclamation? Okay. All right. I am super proud and honored to be able to be the head of a cross-country program that has an incredibly rich tradition and has been filled for many, many years with amazing quality young men, and now it's my turn to be able to help direct them. And this year has been a phenomenal year. This group of boys right here, most of them are seniors. Starting on the left, this is Will Yazdik, a senior. Next is Daniel Klish, Michael Moriarty, Max Lupo, Ethan Kern, and then we have junior Colin Hill. These guys dedicated themselves in the summer of 2018, and this build for 2 years was to what happened this year. We have not won a trophy since 2012, and it is unfortunate that the success of the program in the past, the burden that places upon us now in the present. But they dedicated themselves and came really close last year, finishing fourth. The goal is to finish in the top 3 each and every year. They finished fourth last year, did not want to have that happen again, and did a phenomenal job this year. Our season changed and turned when we went to Terre Haute, Indiana. That was our first invite win, and that's when you could see confidence was building, and we are now on a roll. We won the conference championship. The West Suburban Conference is probably the most difficult conference in the state of Illinois. We won it this year for the second time. We had 5 all-conference athletes in Will, Daniel, Michael, Ethan, and Colin. Phenomenal day for the York team. The next week, we went up against Wheaton-Warrenville South in the Glenbard West Regional and finished second. But in going back to the tent, I could see the confidence in everybody's face and how they handled that particular meet. Even though we finished second, they all looked like we can beat this team. And that was the defending state champion, by the way, Wheaton-Warrenville South. The next week at the Lake Park Sectional, we did beat Wheaton-Warrenville South. And we were conference champions there at Lake Park. It was a phenomenal day, and then set us up for the state meet where we finished third. St. Charles East was the winner. Wheaton-Warrenville South was a little bit better than us on that particular day, and we finished third. And with finishing third, we get all kinds of cool things. You get to wear the tuxedo. We get the parade, we get a pep rally. There's some guys who are in the high school who have a band, and they've got a girl who's the lead singer. She's phenomenal, and they were there at the state meet. Couldn't play because you couldn't have amplified music, so we were a little bummed about that. But then they raced back to Elmhurst, set up their stage, and when we came into the gym, they were jamming out for us, and that was super, super cool. I can't be more proud of these guys. The next weekend, they finished second at the Nike Cross Country Regional and then went on to finish 12th in the United States of America. And to give you a sense of how amazing this group is, when they came in as freshmen, we finished 16th in Illinois. They moved the program forward 12th in the United States of America. Please give these guys a hand. On top of being amazing athletes, they're also great students. They were all conference student athletes. Daniel Klish is going to continue his career. He's going to run at the University of Iowa. Michael Moriarty is going to continue his collegiate career at the University of Missouri. And then Ethan Kern is going to move on to the University of Kentucky next year. And all 3 of them are going to compete. And I'm looking forward to sneaking out some way, somehow, and going to a meet that hopefully all three of them will be at. I'm super proud and grateful to have had this honor. We have assistant coaches as well. Right behind me is Mr. Matt Mimlitz, who, along with the other assistant coaches who are unable to be here tonight, have done a phenomenal job of helping to prepare these young men for life beyond York High School, life beyond York cross country. Thank you.
All right, I want to say congratulations to the York cross country team, to Daniel, to the coaches. I watched you guys have a phenomenal season. I've actually been watching and rooting for the York cross country team since I was a student at York, so it's been a long time. The trophies and ribbons and other accomplishments of this team are amazing. The time and commitment that these boys put in to become the best that they can be is inspiring. Just as important as that, though, is the culture and camaraderie that makes the York cross country team as special as it is. My own son ran cross country for the first time this year, so I got to see firsthand how these runners help and support each other. And I was and encourage their teammates to reach their goals. I went to Peoria with a group, and I was in awe of the support and the music and the band and how much green there was there. It was amazing. So I want to say thank you to these coaches for continuing the traditions of this team and helping our students become not just great athletes, but great young men with character and compassion. And we're proud to have them representing this community. Thank you. I'm going to read the proclamation, and then you guys can come up for your certificates. Whereas on Saturday, November 9th, 2019, in Peoria, Illinois, the members of the York Community High School Boys Cross Country Team placed third in the Class 3A Boys Cross Country Finals, and whereas senior Daniel Klisch earned all-state status at the race, and whereas this marks the team's 45th trophy in 58 years, as well as the first state title under the leadership of Coach Charlie Kern. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, District 205, the families of these students, and the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to head coach Charlie Kern, assistant coaches Jim Hedman, Matt Mimlitz, Reed Sundberg, Ben Sharko, and Steve Boyd for their outstanding performance during the fall 2019 season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the Those Who Excel. So if all of the Those Who Excel award recipients would come up and stand in the middle here, and Mr. Collins is going to honor them. So that includes the communications team. Emily, right in the middle.
There we go. I am, this esteemed group, I'm just going to get right to reading the proclamation and explain why each of these individuals is up here. Whereas the Illinois State Board of Education annually recognizes and honors individuals who have made outstanding contributions to public and non-public elementary and secondary education in the fall of each year at the Those Who Excel Awards banquet and program. And whereas on October 19th, 2019, in Bloomington Normal, Illinois, at the awards banquet, the following District 205 staff and community members were recognized for their efforts by receiving awards of excellence, awards of merit and recognition in 7 categories at the 45th Annual Illinois State Board of Education Those Who Excel program. First is Emily Bastito, Community Volunteer and District Award of Merit for her leadership in the recent referendum. Jen Liban, who is a classroom teacher at Sandburg Middle School, received an Award of Excellence and was a Teacher of the Year nominee, and well-deserved, I might add. Zachary Farber, Student Support Personnel at Bryan Middle School, won an Award of Merit. And Nellie, forgive me if I screw this up, but Nellie Quinones, I'm close, first time ever. Educational Service Personnel, a Field School, Award of Recognition. Tim Reardon, Administrator, Hawthorne Elementary School, Award of Excellence. Tim is the principal at Hawthorne Elementary School, by the way. Rebecca Weglars, am I close? I'm 2 for 2? Shocking to me. Early Career Education, Emerson Elementary School, Award of Merit. And Bev, who is representing the entire District 205 Communications Department, the Team District Award of Recognition. Whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to to Elmhurst Community Unit District 205, to Bryan and Sandburg Middle Schools, to Field, Hawthorne, and Emerson Elementary Schools, and to our community. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of the Elmhurst Community Unit District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to all the staff and community members for their outstanding accomplishments. So I'm going to hand each of you your copy of the proclamation and ask that you do exactly what the cross-country team just did. You know what? I think he's going to get it.
So well done. All right, so we're going to continue on with the meeting. If you want to stay, of course you're welcome, but feel free to leave at this time. And then we'll move on. Okay, the next order of business is public comments. The board will receive public comments for up to 3 minutes concerning items on this agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens or representatives of other public agencies. So I will call your name. You can come up to the podium. We have a timer. It'll beep when 3 minutes are up, and we ask that you wrap up your comments at that time. So first on the list tonight is Edgar Powell.
Good evening. My name is Edgar Powell, and I am a former resident of District 205. I moved into Elmhurst a little more than 2 years ago, not knowing that I would get involved in local politics. I eventually got involved in sustainability issues, and I met a number of like-minded environmental activists and government watchdogs in Elmhurst. Soon enough, I discovered my passion for local government, and I expanded my advocacy. I attended public meetings, learned about the work of the League of Women Voters, among other groups, and discovered the need to hold our government bodies accountable, including the school district. On June 19th, 2018, this board voted to approve an administrative reorganization. 2 members voted no, Mrs. Stufen and Mrs. Ebner. Their remarks were brief, only expressing their desire to have more information. At the time, we didn't know what the reasons were. From the recording and transcript, which you are going to release tonight, we now know that the board held a closed session discussion, which was much more heated. It is now revealed that there were concerns about the growing structure and costs associated with high-ranking HR administrators, that there were union negotiations and last year's referendum to think about, and that Dr. Moyer was not prepared to provide key information that board members had requested prior to approving this reorg. This reorg should have been discussed in open session. The Open Meetings Act permits closed sessions only for the discussion of specific employees rather than organizational or financial concerns. A complaint was filed with the Attorney General shortly after the meeting. The district denied the allegation. The Attorney General eventually determined last April that the board violated the Open Meetings Act and asked you to release the recording for that meeting. However, the board did not comply, despite receiving several inquiries from myself and other members of the public. A lawsuit was filed against the district in DuPage County Court in June. Still, the district denied that it did anything wrong. It isn't until today, almost 18 months after that meeting, that this matter finally comes to an end. This is not a victory for any party. Yes, the taxpayers foot the bill whenever public funds are used to litigate a complaint, either through the Attorney General or before a judge. But the cost to society is much greater when our government is not transparent or when our elected officials don't follow the law. The only ones who profit are the attorneys, yours and mine. In the interest of restoring confidence and trust, not only to observers and watchdogs, but also to the District 205 community as a whole, I urge you all to do better. Thank you for bringing this matter to a vote and a final resolution today, and I wish you all happy holidays.
Next on the list is Lisa Gerhold.
Always forget. My name is Lisa Gerhold Dirks. I chair the Elmhurst Cool Cities Coalition. On behalf of the coalition, we'd like to thank Todd Schmidt for providing a preliminary draft of a sustainability management plan at the November 19th Finance Committee meeting. We are pleased to see District 205 taking steps to address sustainability on a district-wide scale to benefit students, the community, and the planet. Our members have addressed the board on multiple occasions on a variety of topics, so you know that Cool Cities is in support of sustainable schools and a sustainable district. Schools and districts that include sustainability as a focus are proven to save money, improve scholastic performance, retain teachers, improve communities, and reduce their overall environmental impact. Sustainability has been advocated for and will be supported by various District 205 stakeholders, students, faculty, clubs, teams, PTAs, and the community. We recommend collaborating with these stakeholders in the form of a green team or a sustainability committee. While we appreciate your initial focus on the two areas of energy efficiency and lawn pesticides, we ask for your consideration in expanding the management plan's scope beyond those two areas. Sustainability planning should address not only the district's physical buildings and grounds, but also transportation, solid waste reduction, water, food, curriculum, and student engagement. Additionally, the success of the sustainability plan will require defining specific targets and timeframes connected to the goals and measuring the results. In doing so, we believe your future sustainability decisions will be considered more of an investment and less as expenditures. Finally, we realize creating a comprehensive sustainability management plan may sound daunting, but other school districts have done so and done it well. Rather than starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel, we recommend referencing existing plans from other districts and tailoring them to 205. This would also allow the district to begin implementation more quickly when, from an environmental perspective, we don't have any time to waste. We'll follow up via email in the near future with additional information and some examples from other districts. Thank you again for addressing this critical issue.
Okay, next is Gailrano? Is that close enough? Gail. Sorry.
No, it's green. Good going. Okay. My name is Gailrano. I live at 345 Webster, and I've been in Elmhurst since 1988. First, I want to wish the board and the entire District 205 staff a wonderful holiday season. And next, my discussions are focused on the rebuild for Field and Lincoln. The work being done by District 205 to educate our children to be future ready also educates the parents of the importance of this ongoing need. I know our family, through an Echo Club started at Edison many moons ago, was encouraged to consider the decisions we make in taking care of the environment, knowing that our lifestyle and those of others will benefit. I bet we can all share similar examples. With these same objectives in mind, many professional standard bodies have evolved providing methodologies to make better decisions on how to build houses, schools, commercial buildings, and also how to design new communities. USGBC, Passive House, and International Living Future Institutes are examples of those standard bodies. High performance and zero energy schools shape the educational landscape dramatically for the better. For example, students in classrooms with natural light showed a 20 to 26% improvement on test scores compared to artificially lit environments. With students spending approximately 1,000 hours per year in a school, transforming classrooms into healthy and productive spaces is of the utmost importance, especially when short-term and long-term health of students and staff is at risk. Student engagement in zero-energy schools creates hands-on opportunities for teaching next-generation science standards and Common Core. These zero-energy facilities can be used as a tool to develop important skills like teamwork, research, time management, and the use of technology. Zero-energy schools have been built for little to no additional cost and demonstrate lower operating costs over time. The money saved on energy bills can then be used for educational purposes. As a definition, a zero-energy building produces as much energy through clean, renewable resources as it consumes over the course of a year. The future is here now. To learn more about zero-energy schools, go to the website zeroenergy.org. Thank you, and again, have a great holiday season.
Okay, next is Patty Iverson.
Hi, I'm Patty Iverson. I'm a teacher at York High School. I teach AP US History and ACP US History, and I'm here today reading a script from a PSA that was filmed by Murphy McFarlane last Monday at York during the COP25 meetings that were being held at Madrid, and it was sent to Dr. Moyer and to the board with a petition of 250 signatures in support last night. I hope you've gotten them. And these students are studying for finals tonight, so I agreed to read this into public comments. And this is in their words. From Claire Cockman, who is a speaker at the Student Climate Strike. Hello, Dr. Moyer, members of the board, and Elmhurst community members. We are a group of concerned students at York who have come together to urge you to take action for the climate crisis. The COP25 currently underway in Madrid, where the Paris Climate Agreement countries are revising guidelines to further reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. As the UNEP report released prior to the conference shows that the world will need to reduce CO2 levels 7.6% each of the next 10 years in order to reach the agreed upon 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial age temperatures. The USA's impending departure from the Paris Agreement means the U.S. will not be leading this fight to stop the climate crisis. Sea levels are rising, animals and plants are dying at alarming rates, extreme weather is becoming more common, the planet is warming, and it's imperative that something be done to fix this crisis. That is why today we ask you to please commit to large-scale, sustainable, and practical action for the good of the planet, the good of our community, and our futures in a healthy world. From Gigi Barr and Grace Schneider, volleyball captains, whoop, whoop, I'm the coach. We urge you to rid the schools of unnecessary plastic, such as those being used in the cafeteria and dispensed from the vending machines. Instead of the plastic utensils and plates provided to students, compostable options are a sustainable and environmentally friendly alternative. Although silverware is not the only issue present in the lunchrooms, plastic bottles such as vitamin water being sold in the cafeteria and in the vending machines can be replaced with canned options. However, we can eliminate the need to buy water in the first place if we provide more water fountains that are water bottle friendly. It's cost effective and encourages students to bring reusable water bottles that are more sustainable than even the can or the boxed water options. From Ava Uditsky, student activist and the District 205 Sustainability Petition creator. It's also important that we move to energy sustainability in our building. One of the best ways to do this is by using LED light bulbs. LED lights are cheaper than normal light bulbs and use only 1/5 of the energy of regular bulbs. There's virtually no downside to transitioning to LED lights, which are only one of the many ways the district can conserve energy and save money over time. Although significant efforts have already been taken to transition District 205 schools toward LED lighting, we encourage the board to set a concrete date by which all schools in the district will be completely LED. Without immediate action, the move toward energy conservation will be slow and uncertain. In order to make sure that the transition happens, the district needs to start making a conscious effort to complete what is truly such an easy switch. From Ethan Thomas, one of our student climate strike leaders, we urge you to incorporate composting and recycling in all of the district buildings as part of a sustainable approach to decrease waste and energy emissions. While limited recycling has already been incorporated, special bins should be made available and students should be taught how to recycle and compost throughout every school in the district. From Hannah Lonergan, Eco Club student leader. We encourage all new construction to be sustainable. New District 205 schools should be zero energy schools or efficient buildings that can meet all energy needs from renewable energy produced on site. Buildings should utilize solar.
The timer went off. Could you please finish?
Last two sentences. The building envelope should be insulated, windows should be double pane, low flow toilets would conserve water, lighting would be not motion censored, space should be allocated for recycling and food composting collections. Native gardens, permeable pavers, and cisterns would help with Elmhurst flooding problems. Cisterns would also help with water conservation because the stormwater collected can be used for plants and grass. The initial cost might be slightly higher, there, but we will save money in the long run, and we can incorporate these features in our STEM curriculum. These schools would serve examples to others in Elmhurst. The county and the state could emulate them. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Yes. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Jacob Hill, a resident with children at the Emerson School. I'm at 360 Ferndale, and I'm representing the Grau Woods Benevolent Association. And I've spoken before in front of you in regards to Emerson flooding, which affects our neighborhood. And as our understanding, that there's been a recent survey that's been completed at Emerson, and that is the first step towards moving forward to redress flooding issues there that might be caused in some part by watershed off of Emerson and the grading done on the Emerson property. And I hear that report has been forwarded to the city for the next steps to have a dialogue between the city and the district about how to redress flooding issues that affect multiple residents in the area. And we're just here to express our support and hope that we can have a positive resolution and move this process along, and that we're optimistic and confident that something will happen in the near future to address stormwater issues. We know that there's been success with other projects, and we just want you to be aware that we appreciate the efforts, and hopefully this can move along with a solution that results in an optimal outcome for all of us. Thank you.
William Moran. I reside on Ferndale Avenue, adjacent to the Emerson School grounds. Again, I would just like to say I appreciate the efforts that I understand that you're putting forth in cooperation with the city of Elmhurst to help address problems with stormwater runoff and flooding in our neighborhood. I have been a resident for 17 years at that location, and I have seen that the number of episodes that occur of flooding in our part of the neighborhood do seem to be a bit worse over the last few years and happening a little bit more frequently. So again, I appreciate the effort that you're putting forward and look forward to the results. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Merry Christmas, everyone. My name is Dax Marquez. I'm also speaking on the same topic. I live next door to Emerson. I'm at 380 Ferndale, so I also want to express my gratitude for looking into this. I've been there for a little over 2 years now. Prior to buying the house, which largely was because of kids. My two children will attend there, and we came here to Elmhurst for the schools mainly. I was unaware of any of these problems. Of course, the previous owners didn't want to say anything, but found out about them in short order with the first flooding of my basement. One of the topics, or one of the issues that have been raised with talking to the city is that they were unaware of any property damage. They were aware of, some water in the area, water issues in the area, but no property damage was, had been made, they hadn't been made aware of any property damage. The first winter, my house flooded, I think, 5 times. So that was quite fun to pick up every single time and drain it all out. The first time was midnight on a freezing cold night. So I do want to express, again, my gratitude for looking into this. This is something that will obviously directly impact me, but also our entire neighborhood. There's only 3 of us here tonight, but we are in touch with all of our neighbors and friends that live in the area, and we see, we all have many pictures and videos of the flooding, the water coming up to the house from the street, the entire street being flooded out, all those kind of stories. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is presentations. And first up is the Master Facilities Plan update from White and Company.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Moyer and distinguished guests, thanks very much for having us here tonight. It's a pleasure to be back. With me today is our interior specialist, Wendy Watts, and Terry Fielden from ICI. We have a brief presentation for you, just to keep you updated on where we stand with the Phase 1 projects. Just a little bit of an agenda over here today. What we're going to start off with is a just brief discussion about the developments over at Jackson, topic that came up at the Finance Committee meeting. We just want to follow through with some of the questions and comments that we heard at that meeting to get you all up to date where we stand. We'll follow that up with presentation and some renderings with regards to the interiors over at Edison Elementary School. If you remember last time we were here, we talked a great deal about the exterior, the outside of the building, the image and how it interfaces with the surrounding neighborhood. We're going to spend all our time now and energy on the inside here to see how, I'll let you see how the design is developing over there. And then we'll follow up, Terry will follow up with a discussion on the budgets and some scheduling implications for the projects, and then answer whatever questions you might have. So, with that said, let's just jump right over to Jackson Elementary School. So we had heard at our committee, at the committee meeting, that you'd like to get just a little bit of perhaps a history on how the design developed over at Jackson Elementary School. We went back into the archives, pulled out one of the slides that we used repeatedly in our presentations and all the many workshops that we had as we were leading up to the referendum. And wanted to share with you sort of the slide that we used to help describe some of the work scope that we were anticipating or proposing for that particular school. And so you can see really on this slide the area in yellow, which is certainly the hallways. We're looking at the LRCs, the main office, which includes that green area right at the front, which is that red arrow. That shows a little bit of an expansion to the main office, the security vestibule, all part of the overall improvement projects that we're considering for not just this school, but really a similar scope for all the elementary schools in the district. This is a quick drawing that indicates the way that the main office and the main entrance works today, just to give you a little frame of reference, the current plan. So you can see we have the main office, a workroom, lounge, principal, and nurse, all kind of crowded into that main office area with the vestibule, certainly off the front, and a pretty understated, if I may say, just a sidewalk leading right up to the main entrance. So it's pretty understated, but directional. So you get everybody in, they would have to actually check into the main office after they go through the vestibule. And again, a very straightforward organization of spaces. When we were with you last November, we shared with you some of our ideas and thoughts about reorganizing these spaces, getting some of the functions, the workroom in particular, the conference room out of the basement as an option, moving that into the new main office, and then relocating the lounge in that particular area to the front of the building with some new construction, including what we were proposing for the security vestibule. And so this is the drawing that we shared with you. That area that is dashed in red is the proposed new construction area. Understanding that we have limitations on the budget and what we're trying to accomplish, certainly in this first phase, we went back to the drawing board a little bit to try to realign the budget, the work scope, and still satisfy all the things that the district is expecting as far as these projects go. And so this revised proposed plan that we would like to share with you today looks something like this. Again, very much in keeping with, and actually more in keeping with, the work scope that we had anticipated and had discussed with you during the referendum. And that would be a reorganization of some of the spaces within the main office. Certainly a reconfiguring of the security vestibule so that you enter the vestibule and then the main office, check in, and then go to the rest of the school proper after you've been cleared. And then if you noticed, let's see, I can't do that on the monitor, but certainly on the far end of that dashed bubble over there is the work area. So that's a little bit of new construction that we've added just to kind of organize the spaces and then make sure that we had enough room for a conference room in the main office itself. Terry could share with you his thoughts in regards to the budget, but we feel that it's pretty much in keeping with what we had allocated for budget numbers in the referendum, and it does satisfy all of the requirements, program requirements that we've been discussing these last several months. Anybody have any questions about that?
So how does what we're looking at here compare to what was shown to the community during the referendum process?
So this diagram right here is what we shared with the community. And again, that green bar, there was really, we didn't go in depth into any design detailed planning exercises. It was really to kind of define the areas conceptually that we wanted to take a look, more closer look at as we got into the design process. And what we did do, we identified at the front of the building where that red triangle is. So you see that sort of that green box over there. And that was representative of some amount of new construction that we would anticipate to go ahead and provide a security vestibule and whatever additional program spaces that we needed. So we feel that we went right back to the drawing board after our last go around in November and went right back to this diagram and used that as the parameters to try to solve the programmatic issues and challenges that we had at the school.
Okay, because I mean, the last draft we looked at had just an inefficient use of capital with regards to the building out the space. I would say kind of out in this direction just wasn't a good use of capital for the amount of space we were getting. Mm-hmm. So that's why you went back to revise it. But I just want to make sure that we're still delivering upon the items that we promised to the community that they voted on. So I just want to make sure that everyone's confident that that is the case in this. Thank you.
So that green area represents the red dotted area on the future slide. Right. So the square footage is almost identical to what they proposed. In that conceptual drawing, you don't see how they actually reconfigured and connected the spaces, but in the updated drawing, we're able to get the functionality that we were hoping for without having to increase square footage beyond what our initial thoughts were.
Or expand the external wall.
Well, there is a little bit of expansion out there, but it's consistent with what we originally projected.
Okay.
It's just not that area to the right coming out as far, which ran up the cost more than was feasible. That
is right on, absolutely right on, and right in line with the square footage that we anticipated.
And it utilizes a lot of the interior hallway space that was a big dead zone in a way, is what it looks like you're doing.
It does.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to Edison. And just very quickly, a few drawings and renderings that you've seen a number of times now, just to get you oriented. This is a bird's eye view, kind of flying over the school, looking down at the site, and thinking, how that all works. This is again a conversation topic that we shared and that we had with the community members at our last meeting over at Edison, just to remind everybody of the site development and where things are kind of falling. Taking a little bit closer look at the floor plan everything kind of to the south of that red dashed line is new construction. Everything that happens to the top of the drawing or the top of the floor plan then is existing construction that is either going to be a combination of light, heavy, or medium remodeling. And we're going to come back to that point in the last rendering that we have to share with you. But before we do that, we're going to have Wendy take you through all of the other aspects of the design from the inside. So, Wendy.
Okay. All right, thanks. Before I click to the next slide, I just want you to get your bearings a little bit on this plan. We look at it all the time, so we know it really well. But in addition to the new construction, which brings us all of the new classrooms, some of the significant or important interior remodeling is bringing that media center to the center of the building, and along with that, related programs, the makerspace, art, as well as special ed resource room. So I want you to notice that and remember one of the big design motifs that I'm going to share with you is how we're cladding really what we consider to be the core of the building, that area of the media center. So we're using all of our materials to their best advantage and creating a color palette that's going to be a gradient shading that's going to wrap around that whole thing on 3 sides. So that's the way that we started building our palette. So coming in through the new main entrance, which is off of Fair now, you'll have the main office right off the right-hand side. You've just come through the secure vestibule. You've been cleared through and looking into the media center proper. So we wanted to express some of the excitement that's happening there. We have this blue accent ceiling that carries you through, and you start to see a couple different shades of purple, and that speaks to the gradient color palette that we used to wrap around that media center, which is all balanced, I would say, by some really nice neutrals that come through in the floor and some of the other tones. The media center has multiple entrances from all sides, as you can see as we're coming along here. There's that new hallway, so if we step all the way back and we're looking towards the main entrance, you really start to get an idea now of what I was talking about, how we're working with the paints in that fashion, but also on the other side of the hallway, being sure we have lots and lots of surface area for student achievements to be posted outside of the core classrooms themselves. And all of this is working with, the base building, the ceilings that ceiling heights that we have to contend with, but bringing in the new materials that I think are just going to brighten everything up. And then coming around another corner towards the kindergarten wing, similar ideas happening here as well. So we should look at a couple classrooms. So your basic primary grade classroom is this view here, one of the several that would be built, which features the new technology solution that the district is rolling out, along with solutions that we work through with Jim Pliskota and his teaching staff on how student storage would occur. And then the kindergarten rooms, we actually have 2 different views looking this way. So same ideas, but a little bit of a different solution that's more geared towards the center-based learning that's so important at that age level. And then going back into the existing part of the building, which is something that we talked quite a bit about with the committee, wanted to be sure that the existing areas weren't completely left behind and that there would be a really strong demarcation as you're walking through the building of what's new and what's old. So we think we were successful by cladding the old areas in new finishes in the corridors, that it really helps mask so the new construction and the existing will feel the same through the use of lighting, walls, and floor.
Before we turn it over to Terry, these are the glamour shots, right? This is the really fun stuff, the stuff we like to show, and so forth, and very important because that's what people see. But equally important in following a similar track of the development with all the finishes and the way we organize the spaces is really the infrastructure component. We usually don't talk about that too much, but in light of some of the conversations that we've heard, both at the finance committee level and over here, thought I'd just spend a little bit of extra time talking to you a little bit about what goes into those parts that you don't see, but that you feel. And it really comes down to making the building more energy efficient. And by that, we're talking about the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems that we put into the building. In this particular case, it's a VR system that both provides really high efficiency in terms of cooling and heating the spaces. A great deal of control whenever we replace lights in the building, whether it's a new construction or when we're remodeling in the existing building, we're replacing existing lights with LED type with a great deal of controls. Some call it a little bit of light harvesting, meets the energy codes, and certainly provides a great deal of control both for the students and staff during the course of a day. You have you're blessed with a lot of windows in the existing building remodeling, and even in the new construction. That allows a lot of natural light to flood the spaces. That doesn't mean that you have to have 50-foot candles of light in your space on 24/7. So again, this idea of having control over your space allows both the inhabitants, the students, the teachers, ultimate flexibility and control in how they operate the systems. It's not just about the MEP systems, though, too. We start taking a look at the materials that we supply, whether it's carpet, ceiling tiles, low VOC paints, all those kinds of materials, and really kind of go into our specifications and are thinking about the design quality of a space so that not only is it efficient, it's high performing, and it's healthy for the students and the staff. Pretty straightforward. Terry, if you'd like to take us through some of your thoughts about the budget. How about that?
Thoughts or numbers? Good evening. This is a summary of what bid group 1 is right now currently. Of course, we have the additions and renovations at Edison and Bryan, and secure entries at Fisher, Jackson, Jefferson, Churchville, and Sandburg. This is an overview of the cost of the referendums, $168.5 million. We just broke it down here for you real simply by bricks and mortar, soft costs, and contingencies. And then show it a little further down, we have 3 separate contingencies in the project for design contingencies. Construction contingencies, what we use during the construction process when we encounter unforeseen conditions like poor soil. And then cost escalation, which cost escalation is just a reasonable assumption of what inflation might be over the value over the time period of the project. It's not exact science, but it is something we included in the project. So at Bryan Middle School, we had a projected referendum cost of $4.3 million. We're currently at $4.4, roughly $105,000 over the referendum budget. And there's also $800,000 in referendum renovation later on being moved up into the project. For the secure entries, we had a $3.8 million budget. We're currently at $4.5 million. $4.4 million, roughly a variance of $580,000. The main reason for that is that we added a addition to Fisher to make that more efficient. The original space is not conducive for the nurse's office and for the size of the main for the general size of the main office. So it's the right time to increase the size of that building at this time. We had a general renovation scope savings of $261,000, meaning that we had estimated a certain value during the referendum planning phase. That, including the full referendum scope, we are right now projecting to be about $261,000 under that. Then we also have renovation scope move forward from later phases at Jackson of roughly $240,000. And the Fisher expanded scope was $560,000. Those combined, we have a variance from the referendum of roughly $60,000. So we're pretty much on track with the referendum value for the secure additions. So the total for Edison, we had $18.1 million. We're currently at $19.1 million. The variance of $1.2 million. We went back through the drawings and scrubbed them out, and we're able to come up with $1.1 million of cost reductions that are going to be implemented. So we have roughly a $55,000 variance at this time from the referendum. So an overall summary, we think we're in real good shape overall for this first bid phase. We're well within tolerance for this, and we'll talk about the schedule a little bit here. We'll talk about Edison, the phasing and the site logistics, and sort of an overview of the schedule. And we chose Edison because it's the jewel of this first phase and most important for the Lincoln phasing. Craig already explained to you about the addition being to the south of the red line. So the first phase obviously is going to be constructing the addition. It'll be constructed over about 16 to 18 months. There'll be a series of summer renovations.
The first phase, which is in the gold box there, we'll be doing lights and ceilings, sprinklers in summer of 2020. We have to upgrade the entire building with the sprinkler system, and that'll take some time. We'll also be doing gutting the existing library, which is shown as space 20, to make that the admin suite. And then spaces 9 and 10, which will eventually be classrooms, we'll be using that for the temporary library. We'll convert that in the summer of 2020. In the summer of 21, we'll do the heart of the building, which is the new media center. And that involves removing some bearing walls and putting in some steel beams. So that's a major renovation phase. So that'll be the most complex renovation phase that we do at Edison. In the summer of 22, we may have to come back and do some minor cleanup work in these areas here. And the reason for that is the gymnasium and the multipurpose room we're going to have to use for storage for the furniture and so forth that are in the classrooms. We won't have space on the site to put temporary facilities to hold the furniture, so we'll have to use gymnasium areas. And because of that, we may not be able to finish the work that's required in those areas, and we'll have to come back and complete that. This is an overview of the schedule. So going out, we are ready to go to bid. We'll be going to bid the week of January 6th, releasing that. Opening bids around January 31st, reviewing the bids, and then bringing a recommendation back to the board on February 11th to move forward for the summer work. That time period will allow us enough time to order the equipment and get most of it delivered for the start of the summer. We do have some critical needs with mechanical equipment and so forth at all these, at both Edison, Bryan, and all the secure additions. Any questions?
Can you give us examples of what you did to reduce the costs at Edison by $1.1 million?
Well, we took out, there were some things that were, we took out some millwork, some extra finishes and so forth that were maybe could be reduced without harming the overall program inside the building.
So there was $1.1 million of millwork?
It's a little more complex than that, Jim, but I don't have all the information right at the top of my head, unfortunately.
Todd, are you able to give a little bit better example of a couple of those things?
Yeah, I should have printed it, but here, you want it? You want to go over it?
I'm actually have to take off my glasses. Okay. We removed some extra scope. There were some other rooms we were doing some work in. We removed some of that scope. So we tried to expand, thinking we had enough money in the referendum. Went into some other areas of the building that were not originally planned. We pulled some of that scope back. Reduced some of the millwork and so forth. There's a lot of stuff here. Instead of covering some of the existing brick, we left the brick alone. There was some exterior work with trellises and so forth we did not include. We simplified the sidewalk pattern from decorative brick to regular concrete. Reduced some of the fencing scope to regular fencing from decorative fencing. Some of the interior ceilings were wood and so forth. Reduced those and made them back to regular acoustic ceiling tile. Adjusted some of the plumbing fixtures as far as manufacturer type. There was some interior art that we couldn't afford, so we took some of that work out. There's like library trees and so forth that are in there. We reduced some of that because we couldn't figure out how to cost that out. You'd think I'd be able to read this. And some other design issues that we pulled back that were not necessary for education, but were costly as far as building and so forth. That's the simplest way I can define that. The list is very extensive. to get to $1 million, we touched a lot of areas, and there's a lot of little things that came along with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to hear the list in general, but, you know, it sounds like you have a detailed list that's itemized.
Yes.
And I'm sure you all have the dollar amounts associated with that. I would like to see that, just to formulate an opinion on, you know, credibility of the savings, how much of a risk is it versus are we certain that we're getting that, et cetera, because it's a big swing factor in the budget. So I would appreciate seeing that. I was hoping that you could go back to the slide where I think it was Brian. And while you're flipping to it, I'll ask my question. So the slide there had two different line items that said variance, essentially. And I just wanted to make clear that the one that showed, I think, a $500-something thousand variance, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That was before you implemented cost reduction initiatives. And after that work, the bottom number there of $60,000 is the actual variance.
The actual variance is the actual variance is $60,000.
Okay, so the 579 is just the first cut, then we all viewed that number as too high, then you took these other actions, and ended up at 60.
Right.
Yeah.
But the preponderance is related to the addition at Fisher, so the variance.
And then I just wanted to ask about the, you know, part of the reason we had to pursue cost savings at Edison was because of water management issues and some surprises that occurred there during the planning process. And I just want to make sure that that surprises are behind us in that regard at Edison, and also that we're applying whatever lessons we've learned from that to the other projects that are part of our $168 million budget, and making sure that we update us as appropriate there.
So there were two issues at Edison. That the first issue was a large amount of soil that needed to be removed, and that was just you don't do extensive design studies when you're planning for referendums and so forth. But so soil was a bit of a surprise. The water issue is something we are taking away a valuable lesson, both in working with the city and also looking at the existing buildings to make sure that we have enough water storage before we start designing.
I think that's it. Okay. Thank you for going back, and after hearing, listening to all of us listening to the committee and listening to the feedback and going back and really honoring what you heard. So thank you for that. So, all right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is summer maintenance projects. Todd Schmidt.
No, I don't want the tax levy. You can do that. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening. As we look at this list, this is the list of summer projects that we're looking at accomplishing in summer of 2020. We completed about $2.6 million of summer work last year. Some of this is on our life cycle plan that we're looking out there, and some of this is going to be in conjunction with some of the projects that you just looked at, especially at Bryan. So up there at Bryan, part of the life cycle plan is we were looking at replacing some of the mechanical equipment out there, the univents. While we're adding the 2 classroom addition out there on that 6th grade wing, we're going to combine the project with that one to replace some of the HVAC units there within that whole wing. Instead of putting univents in there and univents in the 2 new classrooms, which we really don't like to do, we're going to put a rooftop unit up there for the 2 new classrooms, and then tie the rest of those classrooms in that project or in that wing to this rooftop unit, which will provide a better environment for comfort for that classroom. This is one of the things that we had in our life cycle plan, that we're going to be replacing these 15 and 20-year-old univents that provide the heating and cooling in these buildings. So this is an option where we can do that in conjunction with some of the referendum work that we're doing. On the interiors out there, as we look, same thing with our life cycle, we're looking at replacing and refinishing some of our gym floors. We did Jackson, Hawthorne, and the main gym at York last year. This year, coming year, we're looking at doing the other gym out at York. Also with Sandburg, which has big issues with that gym, and then replacing a gym floor at Churchville. So as we look at this, we're going to start doing gym floors every single year till we get them all up to where they need to be. With Jefferson, to create the additional classroom for all-day kindergarten, that's one of the things that we're looking at doing. In that far classroom in there, we're going to gut that classroom, create 2 kindergarten classrooms with restroom space in there, so they give some extra classrooms in there for all-day kindergarten. With the district-wide, same thing with the life cycling, classroom flooring. Classroom flooring really wasn't addressed into the referendum, so we're going to develop a plan, which we have developed a plan to start addressing replacing classroom flooring in the district over the next few years. Fisher, with our life cycle plan, last year we're looking at bringing all our playgrounds up to speed with new playgrounds and soft surfacing out there instead of the wood chips. Last year we worked with the Hawthorne PTA and we sat there and upgraded that one with a soft surface. Next playground on the list is Fisher, so we'll be looking at replacing Fisher's playground with soft surfacing, and while we're doing that behind the building, we're also going to replace the paving and that play area back there too and address some drainage issues out there. Brian, gravel lot at Bryan, that's the big ticket item out there. So what we're going to get with this is take that gravel lot, core out there's probably about 2 to 3 foot of recycled asphalt that they've dumped out there over the years. We're going to clear that out, basically demolish the whole area, put 0.81 acre feet of underground storage detention there, pave it, blacktop it, put an 8-foot solid wood fence around it, plus with some electrical and power and lighting out there. And then 2 swing gates or 2 sliding gates that will sit there for access in and out of that. Also with that is right now it's about 8-foot setback from the street. We're going to bring it to 32 feet setback from the street and from the neighbors, kind of a little mini berm there with trees and plantings all the way around it, landscaping and all that stuff out there to make it look a lot better than what it is now, and then it'll be more functional for some of those Connex boxes and those things that we store out there. Technically, they got to be on a hard surface and they can't be on that loose gravel surface out there. York field turf replacement, this, as you can see, it's Fund 61. That's money that's included into the referendum that we're looking at bringing that up there, that it's time for us to replace that field turf. It's getting past its useful life cycle. So we got that in there. And the next 2 with the parking lot seal coating and the concrete repairs, those are the same things that we're looking at every single year, putting money towards that district-wide. The re-roof the maintenance garage out there, it's a roof that needs to be replaced. We're looking at doing that along with exterior doors. So Fund 60, you can see $4 million. Fund 61, which is part of the referendum, is about $600,000. That represents what we're looking to move forward with our summer capital plan for 2020. Any questions?
Jim?
Throw a bunch of cold water on your gravel lot, Todd, but I have a very hard time spending almost $2 million to pave a lot, especially when the history of that lot is, and if I can review for the board, 5 or 6 years ago, parents at Bryan Middle School came to us and said that, as you know, the maintenance facility for the district is attached to the back of Bryan. And we were leaving our trucks idling back there, and the closest classroom or classrooms to that maintenance facility, kids were getting headaches from the diesel fumes. So at the time, Superintendent Pernod directed the maintenance department to get as far away from the building as possible, and that led us to the corner that gravel lot is. That was meant to be temporary until we could find a better place to put our maintenance facility. And, like the air conditioning at York that not enough funds in that by the end of the construction project were available to put sound absorption material around the air conditioning units. No board, no administration in the last 19 years has found money to do that. And at York, we've not been great neighbors for almost 20 years. So we have not been great neighbors to the Bryan neighbors for the past 5+ years by parking all of our stuff on the corner. Plus, I don't think we've been great neighbors to the Elmhurst community because Butterfield Road is a heavily traveled street. And frankly, our stuff there has been an eyesore. I'm tolerant as long as it's temporary, but now we're talking about making it permanent. I think once you spend $2 million to pave that lot, I think future boards would be reluctant to throw that $2 million away. Plus, just in a relative value discussion, what you can buy for $2 million in terms of land, I think you can buy quite a bit. And I gotta believe we can find a paved lot for a lot less than $2 million that would be big enough to house our maintenance needs, with money left over to renovate or build what we need for a maintenance office space. So, I think the discussion the board should have is, should we commit right now to taking that off the list and commit to find a different spot for that? Because even if we just go out to bid, I think government inertia, what it is, we'll find ourselves paving that lot and committing to be on that corner for decades to come, which I don't think is being a good neighbor.
Yeah, so I agree that the number is a bit hard to stomach, to be honest, just in terms of, it just seems like an inefficient use of our capital to be spending that amount. So I agree with Jim that I think at a minimum, we need to be pursuing alternatives for how we can accomplish both cleaning up the site or finding an alternative owner for the site or whatever the end game is for that site near Bryan, and then also addressing our needs as a district in terms of maintenance facilities, et cetera. But I think, just in looking at it, my preference would be that we look at other alternatives first before we go out with this for bid. Because I think at that number, at least personally, I would need to be convinced that there wasn't any other better way before I would support that.
Sorry, thank you. That 1.8 is a very large number. Can you talk to me a little bit about what was mentioned, stormwater detention, and what that talks about when you separate that out? If you could break it out, cost. What cost is going to paving? What cost is going to stormwater detention?
If you look, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. What's the impact? I know this is a multi-phase question. What's the impact if we don't do this stormwater detention on this lot? Right.
It won't get approved through the city. So part of this is the stormwater management plan when we have to present this to the city, and part of it is when we have to take that through the calculations, we'll have to add stormwater detention out there.
Okay, so if we don't, all right. So if we don't do it at all?
If we don't pave that lot out there and just leave it how it is right now, then we don't have to put stormwater detention. But if we have to pave the lot or do any improvements out there, then we have to put stormwater detention out there.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. So and I apologize. So I'm just trying to get clear. So the rationale for putting the stormwater detention is only for that surface area. No other area is impacted.
Correct, because with the addition of Bryan, initially when we were putting the addition out at Bryan, we have to put a stormwater detention out there off of that classroom wing, the 2 additional classrooms. We're trying to get that over to this lot to do only 1, but in that service lane in there, the bus lane, there's a big, there's no way for us to get that pipe over there too. So that's why we have to have 2 separate ones out there. But this one for the gravel lot just takes care of that area where we would be paving and concrete and asphalt pavement.
So, sorry, are you done? Okay, so help me think this through. So if we don't pave it and we aren't using it for maintenance, we don't have to put stormwater on
It all
there?
depends on what we have out there. If we turn it
We
into a
just-
grass
like
area,
it's just a
then,
grass, let's say it's just
yeah,
a grassy
then you
area.
wouldn't have to put any detention out there. We have to put stormwater detention out there, either above ground or below ground. But if we put it above ground, it'd be a very small paving area.
Okay, so why is it, did you say 8.8 or did I?
0.81
Oh,
acre feet.
0.8, okay,
Yeah.
that changes. I was like, I'm sorry, just trying to process 8.8.
And that question, answer your other question with that, if you look at that 0.8 acre feet, when it goes about approximately $400,000 to $500,000 per acre foot. So that's where we're at there. So we're probably about 350-ish, give or take.
Okay, Courtney?
Those fields at Bryan, they flood all the time, right? The softball, the playing fields that the kids are playing in. When we put that addition on and add stormwater, will that mitigate that flooding? Or is it this gravel lot that stormwater that will help that area?
I think with the elevation of where the softball field is a little bit higher out there, part of their calculations with the Bryan is the same thing with Edison and anybody else, is we have to look at the additions that were, the previous additions that were done in the future, and we have to put those into the calculations. So the ones for Bryan is not just for those 2 classrooms, but it's also for some of the other work that we've done over the years out there at Bryan that really didn't trigger stormwater management. So how much it's going to help that field, I can have our civil engineer look at that and tell me exactly on there. I don't know how much that would help that field.
Because that, to me, if it's not significantly helping that field, but yet doing this gravel lots or paving and then adding that .81 that would impact my opinion about spending the money on it. Because those fields, like I'm sure lots of us have seen, are horrible, just like they are at many schools. So that would definitely impact my opinion about where I fell on that issue.
But didn't you say that you couldn't get the pipe under the main or the road that connects those lots that Courtney's talking about?
Yeah, because the pipe there's like I think a 4-foot pipe that's in there that we're connecting to, so we couldn't connect that one to this one, then back to that one, because there was a pipe in the way from what the civil engineer
So
was
any
telling us.
stormwater management for that paved lot wouldn't help those fields, because you can't connect them.
Right, and I think it's at a lower elevation, so I think it floods more there. But without looking at the topos on that, but we'll definitely look at that.
I mean, so we've made a commitment to clean up the site and be a better neighbor there, as Jim was commenting on. So it's important to me that we achieve that, but I would like to understand just the full array of what our alternatives are to get to that before I'd be comfortable supporting that amount of capital investment on that site in particular. So for that reason, I think it's better to pause, have a broader conversation around where we should be storing our maintenance facilities, et cetera, and then how that ties into making sure that we also meet our commitment to have the site just look better. And because we've made a commitment to do that, we need to deliver on that as well. Thank you.
Anything else about the Bryan property? Okay, I have a question about the gym floor at Churchville. So, is it going to look like Hawthorne and Jackson, or is it?
No,
gonna
since
be-
this will be at a middle school, this will be their main competition gym, so what we're going to try to do is put a wood floor in there because it'll last longer. Churchville has 2 gyms. We're looking at the main gym as the competition one. So we have a vendor coming in today to look at that, and we love to put the hardwood floor in there if possible. With the elementary schools, it's more of a multi-purpose room gym, so that's a little bit different than a middle school main
That's a good answer. Anything else? Oh, Chris.
Last one, I promise. So a couple of the gym floors that we did recently just were bad from what I saw. They didn't, the So I just wanted to make sure we're not, either not using that material or not using that contractor. We had a lot of issues with that.
Well, part of that material in there is the same material that we have in the field house. It's Mondo, it's top of the line. What we were finding is the machines that we have out there cleaning were junk. So we're looking at purchasing new machines. We brought in some new vendors to do demonstrations out there, and I personally did the demonstration, and it cleaned it up there. Plus, we had to look at the pH concentration we have with the cleaner, amount of cleaner to water that we were putting too much cleaner in there too. So we have 2 new machines coming in there for Jackson and Hawthorne. Then we'll get them up to speed, and then we'll be able to maintain them. These floors have been put in all over the place, and it is a top-of-the-line Mondo product and identical, same type of product in the field house. But a lot of it just went back to how we were cleaning it and the equipment we have that we're cleaning it. Because sometimes on these things, you may need to just put a dedicated brush and a machine to clean this equipment because it's just the cleaning concentration and the chemicals that you use too.
Okay. And then do we have any material capital requests from the building level that didn't make it to this list?
That has not been sent out yet. That's kind of a separate list that we have out there. This is mostly on the bigger, larger stuff. We'll send that list out in February, or those requests start coming in February, right, Chris?
We're trying to push that up this year because last year the furniture, we didn't get everything in for the start of school, so we're going to send it out soon. And move the whole process up a little earlier so that the furniture will arrive on time for the start of school.
Anything else about the summer maintenance? So you're going to get back to us with some different options about Brian before we have to make the decision.
Yes, we'll have to do some modifications because part of Brian was included in the bid documents for Brian itself because we were sharing some of the common things out there with the earthwork and the site work. So we'll have to have White and ICI kind of pull that off of the big documents or separate that out a little bit because we were sending that out there. We were putting a storm trap out there for the addition, so they're already going to be mobilized out there. So that's why we're looking at gaining economies of scale. And with this, anything can bid. I mean, the bids will eventually come back to the board. So I could still bid it out to see exact costs out there. Is it just because it's 1.8 million? Is 1.1 million a more reasonable number if the bids come in there too? I'm open for suggestions on
Well, I think the bigger question that and correct me if I'm wrong, is that I think ultimately it's also about like Jim mentioned, being a good neighbor, and maybe is there an option for where we could put our maintenance vehicles that is not right there?
And the maintenance vehicles would go hand in hand with the maintenance garage facility that I have back behind Brian that's not attached to the building. So
I think part of this conversation is that we may have some options on some things that may become a little bit more clear shortly after the holidays, and if we discover some alternative options, obviously we'll bring them forward as quickly as possible because of the fact that we have some time pressure to make some of these decisions. But there may be some things out there that could help us identify some alternative sites besides Brian.
For maintenance.
For maintenance.
Because we know we want to fulfill our commitment to clean it up, but I think if you're going to make almost $2 million investment, we need to make sure that that's the investment we want to make or not make, or how we want to do it. So,
okay.
All right. Anything else on that?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Todd. Okay, next item is approval of board meeting minutes. Approval of November 26, 2019 and December 11th, 2019 minutes. Are there any changes to those? Okay, those stand as presented. Approval of January 9th, 2018, January 23rd, 2018, February 13, 2018, and November 26, 2019 closed session minutes. Those stand as presented. All right, next item is the superintendent's agenda, consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like to pull? Okay, then could I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's consent agenda items A through E.
I second.
Call the vote, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Next item, superintendent's agenda action items. This is approval of resolution for 2019 certificate of levy.
So you've seen draft documents going all the way back to June and leading into budget presentations in September to finance committee meetings to culminating in the levy. So you saw the public hearing. This is approving the numbers that you saw in the public hearing.
Okay, a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution for the 2019 certificate of levy.
Second?
Discussion, questions? Okay, go ahead and call the vote.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 7 ayes, no nays, the motion passes. Next item is approval of middle school unified arts proposal.
So we presented this at the last board meeting. So there's nothing new here, but just by way of review of what we're asking, the students currently have 5. If they take the Unified Arts Wheel as one of their middle school electives, they have 5 7-week courses. This is very difficult to schedule for at a variety of levels. The principals have brought forward a recommendation that students be allowed to select 4 out of those 5 options that would then run on quarterly basis. And so the rationale is in here. If we want to have further discussion after there's a second, Scott can answer more questions based on the specific memo that you have in your packet or other things that you might want further clarified.
Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the middle school scheduling recommendation for grades 6 and 7 in 2020-2021.
I second.
Questions, discussion? Karen?
Yeah, I appreciate the changes the input that we provided and the changes that got made. I just wanted to clarify, and thanks again for the last bullet in your document about monitoring certain preferences. I just thought we discussed, and what we'd like to do is look at monitoring all the students. And I know that we want to look at the band, but we also want to look at what are all the students saying and how are they getting their preferences? What does that look like? Do we need to make adjustments over time?
Yes, we are looking into a tool to actually facilitate some of the preference monitoring. If not, we're going to work to make sure that without a doubt the band, orchestra, choir students are monitored, even if it requires us doing it physically in a more rogue fashion.
Just so I want to clarify, Scott, so we're looking at a monitoring system, but if we don't do that, we'll at least do it manually? Is that what you're saying?
So we're looking into just being more efficient with scheduling in general. And if we can find a tool that does that, I think it'll be really seamless. If not, it just might be a little bit more labor than what we would have if we had an actual tool that did it for us. But the desire and the request is there, and we want to make sure we honor that. So with confidence, I've been told that we can make it happen.
So I guess what What I would just add and make clear is that preferably it'd be a tool so that we can actually check, all the students. But at a minimum, what I'm hearing is at least it'd be manual and it would be the band, choir, orchestra. Or is that incorrect understanding?
That's correct. These microphones are impressive, Dave. What's going on over here?
Yours seems to be the loudest.
Yes.
Greatest day.
Okay, Margaret?
So last time, Scott, I know we talked about you were going to put in, there were a couple of ways that you're going to notify the parents. And it didn't make this memo, but could you just restate what we were going to do?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. So the principals have put together a course selection timeline that is much more granular than what you have in front of you. More so is just a mechanism for them to just keep one another, in the same alignment with notifying anyone involved. Parents will be notified of this likely the week we return, probably through newsletter with a consistent communication between each of the 3 middle schools. And then also within the incoming 6th grade parent course selection night, but we wanted to make sure we had communication for those that couldn't attend that as well.
Anything else? I just wanted to say again, thank you I feel like this is a result of, the buildings really digging into what would help them be more successful. And so thank you for listening and for your very thorough, and I mean this in the best possible way. I appreciate all the details that you give in your report. So thank you for that. All right, if there's nothing else, all right, then go ahead and call the vote.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Caporio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, next is the release of the portion of June 19th, 2018 closed session verbatim recording, written transcript of the recording, and a portion of the June 19, 2018 closed session written minutes. Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the board find the portion of the June 19th, 2018 closed session meeting as transcribed in the transcript presented to the board no longer requires confidential treatment, and therefore the board shall publicly release the following items. Transcript of June 19th, 2018 closed session meeting as presented to the board. Portion of June 19th, 2018 closed session verbatim recording as transcribed by the transcript. Portion of the June 19th, 2018 closed session written minutes reflecting the transcribed discussion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, go ahead and call the vote.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes?
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caporio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Next item is Superintendent's Communication, Illinois ASCD Whole Child Recognition.
So I just wanted to, I know I notified you of this in the newsletter, but I wanted to make this public because I think it validates much of the work that we've embarked upon recently to try to take a look at what's the balance of academic rigor and the wellness of our children, and what does it mean for the children to be truly prepared when they leave us and leave our system. The Association for Supervision of Curriculum and Development is a national organization. It's the primary organization nationally for people that do school improvement work. So principals, people like our learning and teaching people, that's a primary resource for them nationally to support student learning. And the Illinois chapter has named Elmhurst as its overall, recognize it for its overall excellence and commitment across all 5 categories that are considered. So there are individual districts in the state that get recognized for in each of the categories. We were recognized for excellence across all of the categories. And the reason why I'm excited about this personally is when you take a look at, and it's in your packet, but when you take a look at what Scott submitted for us to be considered for this, there are literally hundreds upon hundreds of people that have worked together on these various different things in one capacity or another, from employees and community members to help make this possible. And I just think it's a celebration for the district, and I wanted to make sure that that was part of a public meeting and on record. Yeah, so I wanted to get that on this agenda. Then,
And thank you, Scott, for filling out all the stuff. But I think it was probably a lot of work.
A lot of detail.
So thank you for that. Anything else on that? All right. All right, Thrive D2, oh, sorry. Oh, Chris. You got to wave bigger.
I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you to everybody involved. I think it's a nice accomplishment, and I know we've had many people on our team in the community working hard on initiatives tied to these topics. So congratulations and thank you to everybody.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so then moving on to the next one. This is just a Thrive D205 update. I met with Ryan Doherty, the assistant principal at York, met with Chris Welton individually, and then we met as a start time subcommittee this afternoon, and we met as a group. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try to take a look at all the factors that we have to consider in order to try to move toward later start times at the high school, and then any subsequent changes that would be required at the other grade levels. So that work is ongoing. In addition to that subcommittee, there are other subcommittees, and those meet regularly as well. So we've got a communications committee, we've got an academic committee, we've got a student services committee. So they continue to meet, and Scott is trying to help coordinate the Thrive D205 work with our MTSS subcommittee, which you'll hear more about at one of our February meetings, so that you can get a little bit deeper understanding of what's going on there and what MTSS is, and how it also compares to some of the things you've heard about, not only the social emotional learning, but some of the findings that came out of the special ed program analysis, and Michael will be touching on that. So you'll be hearing more about that. I didn't go into detail on that tonight, but you'll be hearing more about that in the future. But so there is work on looking at homework and assessment practices, and looking at what we ultimately bring forward to the board, and ensuring that we have proper policies in place to reflect that. And then some additional things with ongoing community engagement. The WE surveys have already been administered, so we'll get results on that soon. The thought exchange, we have another conference call. I believe it's tomorrow afternoon. It might be Thursday. And we'll start to work to finalize what that engagement will look like. And then we have another large group meeting of the Thrive D205 committee on January 27th. We'll look at some of this survey data, get deeper into planning future community engagement, and also provide updates on all the subcommittee work, and make sure that people can coordinate the work, and that we have a solid plan. And then obviously continue to keep the board updated as to what's going on with that in various ways over the next several months.
So on the start time subcommittee, how what is the progress? What's the feedback they're getting from the stakeholders that would be impacted by this? Bus company? Are they seeing that it's a feasible option, or are they finding more roadblocks than they anticipated?
Chris, if you do want to comment, Chris was at the meeting today. I think he was Bev was as well. I would answer that this way. It's definitely feasible. There are still a lot of details and specifics that need to be worked out. Before we wanted before we go forward to the community, which we'll be doing, we needed to internally know what we were going to be asking them to weigh in on. So we had to have some ideas about what was possible with the high school schedule, how that potentially affected middle school. So we have a middle school principal on the committee, for example, and also was entailed with the busing. So I think Chris feels that we're a little bit closer to knowing what the busing ramifications are. One of the things that we need to do is to get some general high-level feedback from the community about values and things that they think are important, and also have an educational campaign about, continue to have that two-way dialogue. But we also need to do a lot of work to get costs associated with some of these things so that by the time we get further on in the process, the community has solid information about what's associated with any possible option, and then we can have a complete and thorough recommendation that ultimately comes forward to the board. So yes, it's possible. Yes, there's progress, but still a lot of details to be refined before, and so Ryan's going to look a little bit more deeper into the staffing implications. For example, if we change around, we're going to take a look at what do the potential schedule changes mean for late arrivals. So there's still work to be done, but I think today was a good meeting to kind of consolidate and help us better define exactly what we need to do to get to the end game. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps, and as you know, I'm an advocate of this change, an action to address a clear stress and anxiety reducer for our high school students. But at the same time, I want to give our families and our educators the time to adapt, right? Elementary school teachers that have to come, our moms and dads that have to come in earlier. I want them to have the time to be able to figure out what they need to do to adjust to the new schedule. And same with families with childcare. So I appreciate all the work the committee's doing. And
Yeah, I didn't touch on the employee piece, but as we look at how this is affected, we are looking at the workday for employees as well. And Dr. Cohen is going to be involved in that in some conversations with our ETC president, ETC council president. But I had a preliminary conversation with him, and again, I think that with proper communication and cooperation, that we'll be able to get there, but those conversations also are still a little bit in the early stages.
I also want to comment on something that I heard you said, and the timing of this to me is important. You talked about the thought exchange and trying to make sure we understand what the values of the community are. So I want to be sure we're in lockstep, that the items that we have highlighted that we believe will move us forward are the items that the community believes are valuable in moving us forward. So I don't know how we continue to make sure those are coordinated, that we don't get out ahead of ourselves and find out what we thought was really important and would provide value. The community has a different opinion on.
So Beth is on the communications subcommittee, and Bev was at the meeting today. There's been a lot of those conversations going on, and I think that there are some ideas about what some of these engagement types of opportunities would look like in the spring. So
just a rough sketch of what is going on in Bev's mind. at this particular moment. Certainly, we have the WE surveys that are already out there, and we're awaiting those results. The next piece would be the thought exchange survey happening, or communication happening in January. We come back here, reveal results, talk about those. There are focus groups that would come after that. And so all of that is starting to build that community value. Then we're looking at a potential spring event to talk about sleep and start times, how those two pieces, that kind of community conversation, and then again, asking the community, what are the values? What's important to you? Not taking our opinions out there. What's important to you? How do you want to see this? And also, when I'm talking about engagement, we're also talking about student engagement. So students would be a part of this conversation as well. And then you can start to begin to craft scenarios and things, even though we'll be building research, doing and looking at best practices, all of those things, Barrington, so many other examples out there. But it all goes in line and builds one building block upon another. We don't want to get down to the end and say, oh, so now what do you think?
Thank you. One thing that was important to the committee was that we make sure that when we are asking the community questions about some of the topics, that even the ones that have come out, like sleep, which came out of a survey we've done already, that they have the information they need in order to make an educated decision about how they feel about that. So I feel like the work that the Start Times Committee is doing is really to give that background information so that when we go and ask the community how they feel about it, we make sure we're giving them all of the information they need to give us, good answers on that. So it's kind of a separate piece, but it goes into the getting input from the community part in the best way we can.
So something I would like to see is, districts that have done this, since we're not the first one to explore this, I would like to see data on if, what improvements did they see, or what did they find it was worth the investment? Because I don't know, I feel like I don't have enough data to make the decision, and this is potentially going to create some chaos if not done well. And I think that it's important that everybody who's affected, which is the whole community, understands why it's happening. And I feel like that's an important piece that I would like to have more information on. And because I think I want to make sure we don't then create a different, just because we're starting later doesn't mean we're going to keep, we don't want to just push everything around the clock. And then, sports are later, so kids are up later, So I feel like that's the piece that it's more than just this to make it successful, it seems like, but I don't have enough data, so.
Yeah, so you don't, admittedly, which is why you don't have to vote right now.
Hopefully soon.
But we had a parent on the committee who's been very interested in this topic and has studied a lot of the stuff that's on the Barrington website, and has shared with us at our meeting today a lot of the numbers that they put forth in front of the community and how they structured some things. But we'll definitely have to show people costs associated with this. And we had a conference call with the Barrington superintendent, and we learned a lot about what he did, which was interesting because he did a lot of talking to the local businesses who employ our people, the local travel teams who schedule practices. So there's a lot of things to think about that aren't just, D205 specific. They have tentacles in the community. But he has agreed to come to one of our community engagements and talk about the Barrington experience. And they actually do have data that, supports some of the things that they had anticipated would actually result. They've been able to see some positive data, and he's willing to come and be a part of this conversation and help us out. So I think as we move through this, I think that we'll be very thorough and make sure that everybody has everything they need before there's any final decisions. But I will say one thing, just to set anybody's minds at ease. The schedule options that we came up with at the high school at this point would not involve major changes to the school day at any of the grade levels. They would be minor enough that we would not have a significant impact on extracurriculars. The start times at Barrington, for example, at the elementary level had to move from 9 a.m. to 7:40. We're not talking about anything that extensive. We're talking 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, maybe some of that kind of thing. So we're working on it, and I can promise you that whatever people need to get their questions answered, we'll make sure that we can do that.
So what you just said is you're looking at moving start times by only 10 or 15 minutes?
At elementary.
So how does that affect the high school and middle school?
Well, it depends on what schedule we land on, and that partially depends on the process that we just outlined here. But the high school, we would not start the high school before 8:30 because that's what the research says. So that's the start time at the high school. That's the biggest change. Everything else gets rearranged around that, depending on community input, buses, cost, and different things that are going to come out of the process. So I think that one of the big concerns people will have will end up being extracurriculars, and I think that we'll be able to navigate that problem without there being a huge impact. What Barrington found and what we think will also be the case is that the biggest input or the biggest impact on extracurriculars will probably be more at the middle school level than at the high school level. The high school should not be all that majorly impacted.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you. Freedom of information.
So there's two, one requesting specific names and emails, which was denied, one requesting a specific service contract, which was granted.
All right. Tweet of the week.
Hello. Waiting on my visuals. All good? All right. Thank you, Board. This is the time of the meeting where we talk about what I would call the warm and fuzzy impact of what we do every day as highlighted through social media. And our tweet of the week goes to one of our instructional coaches, whom I think you're familiar with, Effie Nassis, and her handle is eNassis. And I just want to preface by saying we do a lot of talking, and these seem like simple pictures, but we do a lot of talking about innovation, getting our kids, what does learning mean? And ultimately, are they able to teach what they know? So this is what this represents. And her tweet says, today at Hawthorne D205, fifth graders showcase their learning with pride through their passion project learning fair. They passioned to learn it. They created it. They taught it. They succeeded. Hashtag Hawthorne Ignites. Hashtag Ignite D205, hashtag Student Strive, and hashtag Student Choice. And if you click into these, and I think I can, no, yours is static and mine is a fluid social media post. Once you click onto those pictures, you can see everything from a gym shoe design to a lemon battery to robotics. All of those things represented in those youngsters at fifth grade. I don't remember what I was doing at fifth grade during that time, but I was not creating gym shoes. So congratulations to Effie for highlighting what's going on at Hawthorne and also what's represented around our district, Ignite D205, and happy holidays. For those of you who take a look at your Talk 205, and if you don't, I really encourage you to do that. It's our weekly newsletter that we put out. One of the first entries is a holiday video, and you might find a wonderful guest musician that is sitting on the dais here tonight, taking a trip on the cymbals. So, happy holidays, everybody. He had a good time with the Bryan Band and creating a special holiday video for all of our students and all of our parents. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Board communications, board members will present reports or share information with the full board. Jim?
I had one thing to share that the three people on the board that have high school kids probably already know this because, it's final season. Next 3 days at York will be finals, and kind of unintended consequences for the people that don't have high school kids on the board. My experience, and I'm sure the people that have a high school graduates experience, I'm sure has been any competitive student knows exactly what they need to get on the final to raise their grade or lower their grade. And now with the advent of not grading homework and only tests being graded, and the de-emphasis of the weight of finals, and I don't have any value statement here because I need to think this through whether this is a good unintended consequence or a bad one. But particularly in math and science where homework isn't graded, a test now has more weight than the final. So one test will move your grade more than the final exam will. I'll give you a couple of examples. A kid with an 86 in the honors physics class has to get 110% on the final to move that 86 to become a 90. So, that's quite impossible. A kid with an 89 in that same class has to get a 98.5 on the final to make their semester grade a 90. So, something to think about as we move forward. And then I have one request for the administration. And I think this is just a traditional consequence of high school where teachers work in a silo. And you can almost guess the days during the semester where kids have 4 tests in one day and nothing the rest of the week. I was thinking it through, and Power School knows, and it's not as easy as middle school where they work in teams and all the kids are in the same teachers' classes, right? Teachers can talk and distribute the test load. In high school, that's far more difficult because, not all the kids are taking all the same classes. But then I think Power School knows what every kid is taking. Is there a way to work with Power School to have a teacher schedule a test via Power School and then be notified that, did you know that 75% of the kids in your class have 3 other tests on that same day? I think that's within the database capabilities of Power School if teachers are required to put their testing dates into it. Just an idea that I wanted to throw out there, if that's worth looking into or not.
So I definitely will look into several of the things that you said, and I don't know what Power School can and can't do, and I'm not sure how these grades are being averaged or calculated. One of the things that we're trying to do with the assessment work there is to create more consistency, and it sounds like maybe we're certainly not there yet, but all of those things are things that we can look into, and I'll bring that back to some future conversations and try to make sure that we can take a look at what the final exam practices are, and this whole thing of scheduling and multiple finals, I know is something that we talked about, hoping that might come out of some of the policy work that we're doing too, with future assessment, practices over there, so.
Like I said, I don't know with this de-emphasis of finals and not having a huge impact on your grade, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's certainly taken a lot of stress off of finals for a lot of kids because as difficult it is to raise your grade, it's equally as difficult to lower your grade. It impacts the kids on the margin, but, a kid with an 86 has no chance of moving that to a 90. And they also would just absolutely have to just not show up that day, the day of the final, to lower their grade from an 86 to a 79. So again, I don't know where I stand on that. I just wanted to make the whole board aware that it's something new for our kids and different than from Margaret or Karen, what your kids experienced at York.
So just to build on what Jim's saying, I think the other thing, and I don't know how this is, the high school is planning to do this or how you do it, but, I think the reality is some of these things that have happened this semester have caused more stress. And so, while there's retake policies and different things that have been put in place, some of that has been very complicated. And I think at the end of the semester is a good time to reflect on, how did that go? And I think the kids can tell you, tell us, I think they're telling us if you have a high schooler at home. And also that, to me, because I wouldn't want to be graded on one moment in time, that I would hope that our kids have an opportunity to have multiple ways to be assessed. So, if you're not a good test taker, you can do a project, or there's a way that you can, because learning, we all learn different ways, we all take in information different ways, and I think that is something that, I hope that all this is reflected on at the end of the semester, so that as we move forward, I agree with you, I'm not sure how I feel about some of it, but I do know, if you have a high schooler right now, you're hearing about it. And of course, they're teenagers, so, but yeah.
Kara, if we can provide a format to, I have other stories too that just, I'm not going to prolong this whole thing, but things that we can probably improve on as well. And I'm sure, all of us with high school kids are hearing about this now, and we all have these end of the semester stories that we can repeat, that I think would be good to come out and discuss and figure out, what we do about them. Because some are just not advantageous for kids. Kids worked hard all semester, and then to have their grade blown up by the one last test of the semester has happened. So, I think that's something worth the time to talk about.
The individual stories, I don't want to negate any of that. What I'm thinking is, can we get to a point of what changes were made, why were they made, what's the benefit of it, therefore how did we get to here where we're hearing these stories? I'd like us to raise the conversation to a different level to figure out what do we need to do that's best.
Okay, anything else on that topic? Any other board communications? Okay, we had originally planned to do another study session type committee of the whole in February, so that will be here before you know it. So I personally feel like maybe we need to just look at all the things we're doing in the district and discuss and dig in a little, make sure we're kind of pulling it all together and how it all connects. But if you have other thoughts or things you think about, over the holiday while you're not here, let me know, and we can plan accordingly. So if there's nothing, is there anything else? Okay, so we have two upcoming meetings. Tuesday, January 14th, 2020, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting here in District 205 Center at 7 o'clock. And Tuesday, January 28th, 2020, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting here in District 205 Center at 7 o'clock. If there is nothing else, I want to wish you all a happy holiday, and we are adjourned.